Welcome to part 2 of this series. In part 1, we talked about if your kid wanted to become a game developer, then I gave a few tips on how to actually get your kid to be not only excited, but a few practical tips on how to actually get your kid a little bit more hands-on with what games are and how they work and what goes behind the scenes. In this video, I want to talk about another one, which is an animator, because another thing that my daughters are super curious about is about my craft, the craft of animation. And this is something that has been kind of brewing for a while, because they see me working in front of the computer, they see me moving controllers, and then they see the final animation. And there's a sense of magic where they look at it and they go, wow, this is incredible. How did you do this? My youngest is actually 5 years old now, nearly, and my oldest is nearly 9 as well. So they both like to watch a lot of cartoons, a lot of animations, quality stuff, and they wonder what makes them move at this point. What is happening behind the scenes and who is making these things happen? So if your kid is anything like mine and they're curious about the craft of animation and perhaps becoming an animator at any point, then this video is for you, and I'm going to give you some practical tips on how to get started and how to actually join the journey with your kid on how to become an animator. All right, welcome to another video. My name is Harvey Newman. I am an animator that has become a director, a company owner, and much more over the years. And I've been mostly working in games as an animator. However, the tips that I want to give you are going to be useful for film, for VFX, for games, or even claymation or any other form of animation, because the animation principles are the same. The 12 rules of animations are the same, and basically once you learn how to animate in one of them, you can apply the same principles on multiple mediums if you like. So it's really cool. And the first segment of this video is going to talk about why animation is such a great path for your kids growing up. So animation, obviously I am biased because this is what I do for a living, but here's the things that I've learned over 20 years plus of wanting to be an animator, becoming an animator, working as an animator, that kind of come with it. The very first thing that I need to say here is that animation is a lifetime career, meaning that you can never know it all in animation. Animation is always progressing. There's always other mediums. When film mastered animation, then games came along, and then 3D came along, and all these other things. So you're always learning on how to actually make animation better, which then, to me at least, this is what I tell my daughters, is that once you actually start on this path and you're really passionate about it, then you kind of have to continue and always keep learning as you go along. So you guys probably don't know this, but like Walt Disney, when he created Walt Disney Animation, he had a series of animators around them called the 9 Old Men, and they actually spent the whole lifetime from a young age when they started working with Walt Disney to a very old age, 89 years, 90 years old, constantly working on their animation craft, like perfecting it, learning it, trying different things. And this 9 old men were the ones that actually created the 12 principles of animation. So if they could actually do it with just a pencil and a paper, imagine the things that we can do with software, 3D, especially now with AI coming along. There's so many things, it's like limitless, right? The main things that animation teaches at its very basic is going to be creativity, timing, acting, storytelling, and technical skills. And it's not just about the drawing, it's the performance through movement. What you see in animation most of the time is just characters moving. And this is what I tell my daughters a lot of the time, is that the characters are moving and they're doing things, but you connect with the characters by what they are thinking and what they are saying. So it's the emotional part of it. So translating emotion into motion is what that path in animation takes you as you actually learn how to make animation. You start by just moving things around, normally randomly, normally in a really bad way, and you don't know what's wrong. And normally it's the emotion and the thinking behind the motion. Now, I hope this gives you a little bit of peace of mind on maybe instilling some of that animation into your kid, knowing that there is a career out there for them. Now, let's talk about tools for younger kids. There's a few apps out there that are either free or low cost for you to get. One of the ones that I would recommend is FlipaClip. It's intuitive, it's fun, it's kid friendly, it's about 2D animation, and you can sit down with your kid and do it yourself. I think anybody can do it. It's not tech, you don't have to be tech savvy. It's really, really cool. Second one is going to be Toontastic. I believe this is owned by Google, and it's basically a story-driven cartoon creation tool that you should get. Third one is going to be Stop Motion Studio. Now, a little bit more complicated, but still super simple. And basically, if you have Lego around the house like me, if you have toys, if you have clay, anything that you want to do, I think that Stop Motion Studio is going to be perfect, because especially if you put it on an iPad with a little tripod or a little stand, you can basically put your Legos, take pictures as you move them along, and then see the video. And this is absolutely mind-blowing for my kids as I'm doing these things, because to see that you went from actually having a static object in front of you to then now is an animation makes them truly understand what goes on behind the scenes in animation. And then final is going to be Pencil 2D. So Pencil 2D is a free drawing based software that you can actually use on PC or Mac, and then you can just draw. So if your child has an affinity to draw, to illustrate, I think this is going to be a really good alternative for you. Now, a tip that I have here for parents that want to kind of like foster the animation aspect of this is to basically encourage your kids to basically storytell through drawing or Legos or stop motion, because moving something just for the sake of movement is one thing, but creating a scene where you can say, okay, so where is the character been? Where is it going? Where is it feeling? And then as soon as you put it in that context, normally kids go, oh, I get it. Okay, cool. So now the character came from this and the imagination is through the roof, comes from here, feels this way, and is going that way. So if it does that, then let's move it in that way. So animation and storytelling kind of go together as one. So try to sell it as a storytelling tool more than just moving objects. And then make sure that they animate short sequences. Make sure they don't take on the world, because this is what my daughters wanted to do straight away. And it's a lot of hard work animation, and taking it in small bites is much better because you get to see results faster, and they will start kind of creating things more naturally as they get older. But you know, short animation pieces is probably best. But let's move on to the next section, which is going to be stepping into real animation with kids that are 10 years or older. Okay, so this is where things get a little bit more real, and this is where you start to showcase to your kids a little bit more of the professional side of things. So where things that they will actually do as professionals later on as young adults, right? And my eldest daughter is 9 years old, and I can see the trajectory where one day, because she's getting more and more fascinated by what I'm doing, I can see a day where she goes, can you teach me how to do the things that you are doing in a 3D software? And the software that I use every day pretty much is a software called Maya, Autodesk Maya. And it's a 3D software that you can basically manipulate your characters, and you have rigs, and you can basically animate. And this is how most movies, most games, most VFX get done nowadays. So I wouldn't recommend necessarily Maya, the software that I'm using, because it's really complex. There's a lot of buttons, there's a lot of options, and even for adults, I use a fraction of Maya because it can do fur and textures and lighting and rendering and all kinds of stuff. But there is software out there that makes things a little easier and also is not expensive. It's either free or low cost. To start, I think Blender will be the best place to start in 3D. Because it's a free piece of software, you can do a lot with it, and it's community-based, and if you go to YouTube, you can find a bunch of different tutorials. So if you actually want to learn how to animate properly in 3D, start with Blender and you can't go wrong. Now, the second one that I would say is Krita. Krita is a digital art and simple 2D animation tool that might feel a little less intimidating than the 3D space of Blender, and also really good. I haven't tested it myself, but I heard great things about it. Now the third, which is going to be a household name at this point, is Adobe Animate. So this is going to be, used more on professional 2D pipelines, but I do know that a lot of YouTubers that do animations, they have huge channels with millions of followers that you see them kind of like moving their mouths. They are 2D cartoons and stuff. They normally use Adobe Animate. So if your kid is a fan of those type of animations, then maybe getting them used to Adobe Animate might be a good idea. If it's too advanced, once again, go back to Krita, and that might give you a more bang for buck and also probably cheaper. And then two last options for when your kid is 16 to 20 years old, which is going to be TV Paint and Toon Boom if your kid is interested in 2D only, 2D animation only. Those two are used in professional production. 2D, like animators that actually do 2D on computers right now, use a lot TV Paint. They also use Toon Boom. And then if your kid is into 3D and wants to go deep into it, then Unity, Unreal is super powerful. Unreal is the engine of choice for most game studios, and you normally pair it with Maya, which is the software that I'm using right now. However, be careful, because Unreal is really complex, and if I just mentioned that Maya was complex, Unreal is at least 10 times as complex as Maya. But overall, I think these tools are super powerful, super great, and depending on what your kid likes, I think any of these will actually suit incredibly well. When it comes to learning platforms at this age, most likely you no longer can sit next to your kid to actually do the thing together, because it's going to be out of your realm, and as a result you probably need to actually now push them to learning education somewhere, somehow, with somebody. And I think when you start at around 10 to 16 maybe, I think YouTube is a great source of information. There's lots of great channels on animation, on Unreal, on TV Paint, on any of the software that I just mentioned before. Also, there's platforms out there that have mini courses such as Skillshare, Udemy, CG Spectrum. I have a course as well, which I'm going to plug here, which is about motion capture for games, that you can clean up motion capture with Maya as well. And then there's books as well. I think books are super important, and if you do anything, as soon as your kid can read and actually is super interested in animation and wants to know more, the number one book that they should have in their collection is a book called The Animator Survival Kit. And you can see the 12 principles of animation, how to apply them. It's a very practical book with lots of illustrations, very easy to digest, and things that you can practice yourself, especially if you're into 2D animation. All right, let's move on to the educational path of your child when they actually go, yes, I want to be an animator. Here's what you need to do. A few weeks ago, I made a video about becoming a games developer similar to this, and in that episode, we mentioned about pieces of software that can help you get into engine and code and all that stuff. And in this one, I'm talking about animation, but I think this is absolutely related when it comes to this software, which is called Cody. Cody is basically an early stage programming companion that allows you to learn the basics of code. It's a gamified experience, so therefore, you very much get taken through every single step, and it never feels daunting. You get a personalized learning journey where Cody asks you a few questions and gets to know you before creating the program for you. And because it's a gamified experience, it never feels too much. So I'm starting to actually show this to my young daughter, 9 years old, and even she understands what she needs to type. And she does it slowly, but she understands where we need to go, and this is step 1 and this is step 2, and it's really useful. Now, the target audience here would be for the teenagers, the young adults, or even adults like myself that actually want to learn how to code or are curious about learning how to code. And this experience with Cody allows you to basically decipher a little bit more about what goes on behind the scenes. So beginners, self-learners, or aspiring developers are the perfect audience for Cody. So if this piqued your interest, make sure to check out Cody on the description down below. And now, let's get back to it. The very first thing that you need to actually talk about, or you need to focus on, is building a strong foundation for animation. So first thing, drawing. Drawing is not essential for animation, especially if you're doing 3D animation. For 2D animation, absolutely is essential. But if you do focus in 3D, it's not essential. However, animation at its most basic is just poses after poses after poses. So knowing how to actually create a good pose in 3D, or illustrating a good pose, or demonstrating a good pose, goes a long way for you to become a really good animator. And this is where I would recommend your kid, yourself, reading comics, because comics, especially from a really good artist, they are basically stills of an animation, and they have amazing posing. So if you study comics, you can translate that knowledge, this is what I've done at a young age, into animation, because you will innately understand what makes a storytelling pose. And this is what you want in animation. So I hope that makes sense. Another thing that you need to actually think about and focus on in terms of skill is acting. All animators are basically bedroom actors. We all kind of like act out to camera for reference and have to actually be as authentic as possible so the animation comes out as authentic as possible. So if you can get your kids to go to an acting school and learn acting as a tool to become a better animator, this will help them a lot. And then the last one is going to be observation and movement. Observation is important for you to, if you have a sketchbook, you can basically start observing how birds move, how dogs run, how dogs bark, things around the world around you. How do they actually move? So those two things are kind of correlated, observation and movement, they kind of go together. And another thing that I would suggest here as well when it comes to the path of learning is life drawing. So going back to the posing, this helps you to actually kind of like understand the human body. This is going to be the number one thing that you're going to animate. Helps you to understand how it can push certain things to become better. And then choose a good school for your kids to go. Now, a word of warning here. Unfortunately, animation, even though it has come leaps and bounds, not every country, not every university has a course on animation, bachelor's or master's in animation. So online schools are really powerful here because they have lots of great knowledge with a lot of great professionals. I actually was part of one called Animate. That's one really good source. There's another one called Animation Mentor. It's another great source. And there's quite a few others, including myself. I have also a coaching that I do to people one-on-one if you're interested. But the most important thing here is to make sure that they are being taught by somebody that knows what they're doing and they have done it professionally for a number of years. So it doesn't really steer your child in the wrong way. Now, even on universities, colleges that have amazing animation courses, make sure you double check their curriculum, who's teaching, do they have experience, hands-on experience, either in games or films, because this hands-on experience allows you to basically know that the person has been through the trenches, doing the thing, which means that everything they will teach you will be correct by the time you become a professional yourself. Okay, so last point is going to be what to practice and a little bit more help. So here, how to practice, I think is important because it's hard sometimes to start somewhere. What do we animate? What do we actually do? And the very first thing, just like any other art form, copying is going to be the catalyst of how you actually can become an animator. And breaking down clips from either animated movies, shows, or movies that you love will help a lot. So let's say your daughters are anything like mine, or your kids are anything like mine, they love Frozen. There's a scene in Frozen that, want to build a snowman right in front of the door. Try to replicate that with your kids. Maybe a small Lego door, maybe a small Elsa or whatever the character name was, I forgot, in front of the door. How would you replicate that to the song, to the sound of the music, right? You can place the song and then replicate that scene, and then you have a place to start. This is where I normally start, because then when they see the actual thing and then they see what they created, they will like their thing that they created much better than the stuff that is in the movies, and they will understand why animation is so cool, because even that scene was created by somebody, right? And then short looping animations also help. Like, make sure that whatever you animate is looping, so basically they can see it forever. This is also great because when you start and stop a short animation, it just feels like a blink. So if you actually do a looping animation, like somebody maybe doing a somersault running and then going back to point A when they started, when you press play, it will loop. This will actually be, yet again, another thing they go, wow, this is amazing. Also, not focusing on perfection, because storytelling, performance, rhythm, it's all a thing that happens organically. There's no perfect way, one way of doing anything. So not being perfect actually helps kids to understand that this is an iterative process, and normally it's with a team. Just saying that this is good enough and next time will be better will actually get them to understand that there is going to be a journey that we're going to go together in order to become a better animator. And then support them in everything they draw, support them in everything they do, try to do it with them, be next to them. That is the best thing that you can do for them. This is what I see in my daughters, and I wish that I had it myself, but definitely try to do that because you will go a long way. Okay, so small recap for everybody out there. If you're still with me, thank you very much. Recap, start small. Let them tell stories, not you, them, because it's going to make a huge difference. Introduce tools to match their age and also interests. Make sure it's not too hard, not too easy. Try a few, and then if they actually adhere to one, then continue on that one until they find it too easy and then move on to the next one. You don't need to know animation. This one is a really important one because a lot of people feel intimidated to teach their kids how to animate even though they are not animators. However, animation is for everybody. You don't need to be an animator to know how to animate. So just asking them what they are making and showing interest, I think goes a long way. Plus, if you go through that journey once and they don't understand it, and if they like it, they'll be able to do it themselves in no time, right? So there's going to be a part 3 of these videos that will actually talk about education paths, art schools, online and long-term support. So stay tuned for that. And please share your experiences down in the comments and ask me questions about anything that I mentioned in this video, because I'm always happy to interact with you guys, answer the questions. I'm sure I'll miss a bunch of stuff. And if you have extra help to give others based on this video, also comment down below, because I'm pretty sure people will actually commend you and appreciate your help, because, you know, I cannot cover everything in every video. So I appreciate the help ahead of time. That's all I had for you guys. I hope you find it useful. And if you did find it useful, you know what to do. Until the next video, stay well, stay safe. Peace. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful, go ahead and hit the like button. If you super enjoyed it, leave a super thanks. It's like leaving a little tip and it directly supports the channel. If you haven't already, subscribe and turn on post notifications so you can continue to see my videos and get your weekly dose of better.